Welcome back everyone to the Visvim Pioneer channel. Today I have a very special piece to show you guys. We're going to take a deep dive into one of the most iconic jackets from Visvim. This is a jacket that embodies the full ethos of Visvim. You're combining heritage with Americana. You're also taking into consideration craftsmanship and things of that nature. There's also hand dyeing, mud dyeing, and things like that are done on this jacket, and I think this is probably one of the best interpretations of this version. In addition to the craftsmanship of this jacket, we're also going to be talking about some of the previous designs, the history of it, as well as what makes this jacket special. So if you're a Visvim fan or just curious as to what this jacket looks like, make sure to stick around to get the full details. So here we have the 2024 release of the Visvim Kerchief jacket. So here in the US, this released on Black Friday along with a few other colorways. The two most notable are probably this blue as well as the other green version that was released. The more commonly released kerchief jackets are the navy and the red. Of all the colorways, I think that this one was probably the most special. I would say the navy is the most common and the red probably follows after that. But the blue and the green versions have seen different iterations in the past. I would say that the blue previously was more of like a turquoise rather than this like royal blue. So I like the fact that this one stands a little bit on its own when compared to other releases. So as you can see, there's so many different details to go over, and we'll be taking a closer look at those soon. Going over some of the history of the kerchief jacket, based on what I was able to find online, it was first released in 2009. The kerchief jacket quickly became one of the standout pieces for the brand, and it really does showcase the signature blend of Americana-inspired design and Japanese artisanal quality. The design of the kerchief has stayed relatively the same since its conception. While there have been a few different versions in the past that have used slightly different patterns, I think that this bandana iteration is probably the most iconic of the bunch. One thing to keep in mind is that the newer releases of the kerchief jackets are a lot roomier and definitely have a lot more space than previous iterations. Previous releases are considered to be a slim fit, and they're much more tailored when compared to the looser fits of the modern kerchiefs. The standout feature for this jacket is the use of these vintage bandanas. Typically, they're pulled from the 1950s and the 1960s, and they're 100% cotton made in the USA. The price on these bandanas varies, as do the scarcity, and so some of the colorways are a bit more common than others. As previously mentioned, the navy is pretty common relative to all the other kerchiefs. However, this does point out one flaw with this jacket. The materials on the exterior aren't necessarily of the highest quality. So Visvim has made different versions of the kerchief in the past where they use their own bandana print and try to replicate the texture of vintage bandanas. And while those might be a little bit more, I'd say, durable because of the modern technologies and modern materials, I think that these vintage bandana kerchiefs have a certain charm to them. The other thing that not a lot of people noticed, myself included, was the fact that the collar is like snapped down with these buttons. I think that that's a nice cool little detail in order to keep the collar in place. Previous versions of these jackets would have brass hardware, or sometimes they'll be branded Visvim as well. The buttons used on this particular jacket don't have any branding on them, and they kind of don't stand out as much because, you know, they're kind of like this like silver color instead of like a gold color. I think they embody the ethos of Visvim, right? It's creating that perfectly imperfect balance of trying to have garments with character while also, you know, having items that are quote unquote authentic. Based on what I've seen online, previous versions of the kerchief jacket had a cotton, almost like linen blend on the interior. However, this latest version does have a full rayon lining. So it does kind of have a silky feel. Some people prefer the previous version that was hand-drawn. The backside of this jacket is definitely a lot more symmetrical than the front. You can also see some of the little details here with some of the script from the bandanas that's written on them. So you'll see a lot of made in the USA, 100% cotton, and I think that this like character that's being shown through is something that Visvim pulls off much better than anyone else that does like a similar jacket with bandana prints. I think that this piece is definitely more of a shacket in its wear. It's not necessarily a full outerwear piece. I feel like it really wears more of like an in-between layer. The stuffing on this particular jacket isn't as thick as it would be on like the corpse down jacket or on the Ulmer. So because these jackets are made with vintage bandanas, each release is going to be slightly different from the rest, and typically these adjustments are made in the details or the color choices. So there's little things, especially for those that collect kerchiefs, that are noticeable, but to the untrained eye you might not really see many of these changes. For the most part, I'd be wearing it with just a t-shirt under. One thing to keep in mind also is that there is no side pockets on this. I would say the second more popular way to wear this jacket as well is with a hoodie underneath. One thing to keep in mind is that kerchiefs used to be a lot less expensive than they are now, but as the scarcity and availability of these vintage bandanas has decreased over time, the cost to buy them for Visvim to be able to put them together has definitely gone up. On the other hand, I am a size 5 and these jumbo cuts have gotten bigger, so there's definitely a lot more bandana being used on this size 5 than on like a size 1 or a size 2. I think another thing that needs to be taken into consideration when discussing the price point of these jackets is the small scale of manufacturing in which these are typically produced in. For the most part, kerchiefs release once a year. At least that's the case here in the US. They typically are reserved for special Black Friday releases, as was the case with this one. The other thing to keep in mind with these kerchief jackets is, for the most part, depending on the colorway that you get, you're not really going to lose money on these. They tend to hold their value pretty well, especially on the secondhand market. And the more special the color you get, obviously, the better it'll hold its value. Not that that's any reason people should be buying these pieces, but it's definitely nice knowing that you're not necessarily just burning your money away. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. Peace.